Right, how's it going everyone? The video today is about how do we build big, massive, chunky legs, big thighs which are ripping out of our shorts and you struggle to buy pants for. That's what we want big, massive legs, okay? Again, there's many ways to go about it. There is no one size fits all approach, but I'm going to give you a couple of exercises, like 5 or 6 for both the quads and hams, which I think are effective, and if you are going to put these in your program, if you were to get stronger on some of these over time, it's definitely going to show in your leg size, okay? Now, as I say, there is no must-do exercise here. This is just a guide for you to go off. Take it with a pinch of salt if you want, but this is what I would recommend. So, let's get into quads first, then we'll get into hams. So when we're talking about quads, first one, I have to put back squats there first. Now, there's a lot of conflicting information in the industry now about squats are not optimal for quad growth and all this stuff because you have a wide array of other muscles that are going to help you out in a squat, which is true. You also don't have the stabilisation effect that you might have with machines, which again, that's true. They are some of the negatives with back squats. But what I will say for back squats, talking from my own experience as well, again, I've been training for near on 12 years. I've been heavily involved in powerlifting, so a lot of my training has revolved around the back squat, and I've built massive legs, big quads, big hamstrings off following powerlifting style training. I'm not saying that's optimal. I'm going to get into everything as I get through the video, but just take some of this stuff, what a lot of the gurus talk about now with a pinch of salt, because some of these movements, they still do work. With the back squat, if you were to get stronger on your back squat and the hypertrophy rep ranges, and the 6 to 12 range, for example, if you can squat, if you're in that range of squatting 300, 400 pounds for sets of 6 to 12 comfortably, that is more than likely going to show in your quad size, okay? I'm not saying that's the be all end all, far from it. What I am going to say, if we wanted to make back squats more quad biased than what I'm currently doing at the moment, you want to do them with a heel elevation. This is a way to make a back squat, take it away from being more maybe glute or lower back dominant. If we really raise our heels, you can use squat shoes on top of a plate, or you can use a squat wedge. We really get that extra knee flexion in the bottom position. You're going to put more stress on the quads, okay? That's a way to make back squats more quad biased. Now you can do that with a straight bar or a safety squat bar. I've seen many people do that, but again, I think if you're gonna do back squats, heel elevated in your program, and you were to pick a variation of those and get stronger on those over the course of the next couple of years, I think that's going to show in your quad size and development, okay? So I have to put that in there, number one. Obviously there's a couple of caveats to that, and that will change from person to person, but I'd have to put back squats in there, okay? Number 2, hack squats. Now I'm going to put hack squats and pendulum squats both in the same bracket. Both squat pattern machines. Now what we know the benefits of machines, we're locked into position, the nervous system and the target muscle can detect that we're stable, so you can really hone in on the quads. If your gym has a hack squat or a pendulum squat, they're both very similar. Again, if you can really hone in on the quads, you don't have to worry about stabilising the weight, you don't have to worry about other muscles taking over or your core being a limiting factor. You can just really hone in on the quads. You potentially have the better stimulus to fatigue ratio with a hack squat and a pendulum squat. So again, very similar. If you were to get stronger in the hypertrophy rep ranges, the 6 to 12, 6 to 20 rep ranges over time on a hack squat and pendulum squat, if you drive your poundages up, that's going to show in your quad development. There's no two ways about it, okay? 2 of my favourite quad exercises. If your gym has access, or if you have access to 2 of those, I will probably be using a quad size as your main goal, okay? Then we get into a single leg variation. Now, I could have went many different avenues with this. We could have went dumbbell lunges, dumbbell split squats, Bulgarian split squats normally with dumbbells, barbell walking lunges. They're all fine options, but if you have access to a Smith machine Bulgarian split squats, where you prop that back leg up and you're on the Smith machine, they're a game changer. I've recently just started doing these. Now, what you have with the Smith machine, you have the increased stability, you're in a fixed bar path, so what's the thing that lets everybody down on single leg work most of the time? Think back to the time when you were doing walking lunges or anything like that, or heavy loaded split squats. What's the thing that gives out first? It's always your balance. You're always thinking about balancing and not falling over or losing the weight of some sort. So that takes away from how much you can really hone in on the quads. With the Smith machine, Bulgarian split squat, because you're on the Smith machine, you don't have to worry about balance. You're extremely stable, and you can really just hone in on the quads, especially with that back leg propped up. You get that great range of motion and real deep stretch. Now again, you're getting a deep stretch, you're stable, you're not going to lose balance, and you can hone in on the quads, really get to work on the quads, take them close to failure, and not have to worry about losing your balance. So that's an exercise that I will put in there for big quads. Any sort of single leg work is going to be fine. I just wanted to give you like a golden tidbit of like if I had to pick like an elite single leg variation for quad development, I'm going to go with this, and I wish I knew about these sooner, okay? And the final one, I've got like a bit of a star next to leg extensions. Now, in order to fully develop your quads, you're going to need to do leg extensions. There's no two ways about it. Now, why is that? As we know, the quads have 4 heads. Now, the rectus femoris, this is one of the quad heads where it crosses both the knee and the hip. It's a biarticular muscle. Now, in order to fully develop the rec fem, we need to train it in absence of the hips. So when we're sat down on a leg extension, the hips are not moving, the hips are not involved. We can just really hone in on the rec fem. Whereas anything else like squats, hack squats, all of this stuff, your hips are always involved. So when your hips are involved, your rec fem, it isn't activated, it doesn't get put under load. So we need leg extensions in the program to fully develop your quads, okay? Same principle applies. Get strong on those, and you're not really going to do leg extensions for sets of 6. But let's say the 10 to 20 rep range, if you drive your pounds, you do over time with good technique on your leg extensions, that's going to show your quad development, okay? Now obviously there's other exercises. Now, I haven't put a leg press on there. That's a perfectly fine exercise to use if you want to. You can even do single leg press. Again, I didn't have a lot of room on the board. I just wanted to give you 5 or 6, but leg press is a viable option. But it didn't make the cut for my favourite 5 or 6 quad exercises, okay? So that's quads. Now, let's get into the back of the leg, the hams, the meat. The meat on the back of your thigh, extremely important. A lot of people, they may train their quads hard and they think that squats will hit their hams. No, it doesn't. Hamstrings are extremely inactive when you're doing a squat. They're not put under any sort of eccentric loading or anything like that. They stabilise the quad and the hip, that's all they do. They're not put under a full stretch or load in a squat. So if you think hamstrings are going to develop if you think squats are going to develop your hamstrings, you're mistaken, okay? So what you need in order to develop that meat on the back of your leg, right? The best one is what we're going for, a stiff leg deadlift and a Romanian deadlift. Couple of differences between the two. I've spoke about this many times. A stiff leg is done from the floor, Romanian deadlift starts from the top with an eccentric contraction. Both phenomenal builders for the hamstring. You won't see a conventional deadlift here. Why is that? Again, I've spoken about this many times. Conventional deadlifts, they're great for strength and if you're involved in powerlifting. But if you're actually trying to grow your hamstrings, a conventional deadlift or a sumo deadlift for that matter, it doesn't put the prime movers of the hamstring under a full stretch. They're never fully lengthened at any point in the movement. It's just they're poor movements for hypertrophy of the hamstrings. It's going to get some hamstring growth, but don't forget with a sumo and a conventional deadlift, the amount of weight that you can use on those compared to your Romanian deadlift and stiff leg, it's a lot higher. So you're using a lot more weight for not the best stimulus. That is a poor stimulus to fatigue ratio, and when hypertrophy of the hamstrings is the main goal, conventional deadlifts and sumo deadlifts should not be one of your main movements, okay? That goes without saying. That myth needs to be busted. If bodybuilders or anyone, if you're actually trying to get bigger hamstrings and you're fucking around with sumo deadlifts and excessive conventional deadlifts, you are shooting yourself in the foot. Use one of these two, okay? Phenomenal exercises. Now, another great one is good mornings. We can do this with a barbell or a safety squat bar. I personally like the safety squat bar. I just think it just hits the spot. Really get a full stretch on the hamstrings in the bottom position, and you don't have to use as much weight with a good morning. So again, has a high stimulus to fatigue ratio and a phenomenal exercise for the hamstring. Okay. Then we get into the 45-degree back extension. Very similar to the fact with the good morning, you can't use as much weight on these. Again, such a good exercise, high stimulus to fatigue ratio. If you didn't want to do one of those, you could build big hamstrings by doing a good morning and ham curls, which I'll get into now, why hamstring curls are important. But 45-degree back extension, a great hamstring exercise. Okay. So, just like I had leg extensions with a star next to it, I also have got hamstrings with a star next to it. Now, in order to fully develop the hamstrings, we need to train both hip extension and knee flexion. Okay. The hamstring, again, it's a biarticular muscle. It crosses both the joints of the knee and the hip. Now, in order to develop the certain head of the hamstring, we need knee flexion movements. Okay. So any sort of hamstring curl, it can be seated, laying down, or a standing hamstring curl. Personally, I think the seated one is the best because you have more stability, but it's probably negligible differences between a seated and a laying down one. I appreciate that most of your gyms are not going to have all three. You'll be lucky to have one. Just whatever one of those hamstring curl machines that your gym has, just use that and get stronger on that over time, and you're going to cover all your bases. If you don't have a hamstring curl machine, things like Nordics, that you can do body weight, they're a game changer. Glute ham raises, if you have things like that, but they're extremely difficult. My favourite is it's just a simple hamstring curl. Okay, to fully develop the hamstrings, we need some knee flexion based movements. So as I say, you could pick good mornings and seated hamstring curls, and that'll be your hamstring training for the week. You'll be fine. Okay. Now that's exercise selection. As I say, that's just like 5 or 6 for each. Now let me go. How do we do it? What are we going for? Okay. So first thing, around 8 to 12 sets a week. Okay, that's all we need. 8 to 12 sets a week for quads. So it could be 8 sets of quads, 8 sets of hams, for example. Okay, and we're going to hit that with 2 times a week frequency. So let's say we were doing, let's say 8 sets for both. You would hit in your lower day one. You could pick 2 sets of squats, 2 sets of split machine, Bulgarian split squats. That's your 4 sets of quads. And on the next lower day, you could pick leg extension and a pendulum squat, 2 sets of each. So that would be 8 sets in total of quads for the week. Okay. Same with hamstrings. If you were going to hit 8 sets, you could do stiff leg for 3 sets one day, hamstring curls for 3 sets the next day. That would be 6 sets. And then you could do 2 sets of good mornings a couple of days later to hit that 2 times a week frequency. Okay. The 8 to 12 sets, that's a guide now. I would always recommend someone starts off around 8 to 10, and if you feel like you need more work, you feel like you're not making progress and you're still recovering fine, you can maybe layer in an extra set or 2. But the whole research where you need up to 20 sets for a muscle group, I don't believe that. I think your training intensity is probably not where it needs to be. If you can handle 20 sets of hamstrings and upwards of 20 sets of hard sets for quads, that's the difference, hard sets. Now, what does that mean? If we're actually training at 0 to 2 reps in reserve mark, okay, we're getting close to failure. Quad training getting close to failure, it sucks, it's fucking hard. Can you imagine doing a pendulum squat or a hack squat going real close to failure? You've got 1 rep in the tank, that shit is soul destroying. If you do your hack squats and you leave 6 reps in the tank, of course you'll be able to do 20 sets of that over the week. But if you're really taking your training you're training with intent and you're really serious about getting results and you're training close to failure, you will not need as many sets. And that's the thing where a lot of people fuck up on. The intensity is just, it isn't there at all. Okay. So 6 to 20 rep range, that's where we're going to have the majority of our work. Okay. Now it doesn't make sense to be doing sets of 3, sets of 4 for quad hypertrophy, and again upwards of 25, 30 reps, it doesn't become viable anymore. If you get stronger on all this stuff in that 6 to 20 rep range over time, driving your poundages up on all of this, that's how you're going to get bigger legs. Okay. Now just to finish it off, use 3 or 4 movements per block for both quads and hamstrings. Now what I always talk about with people always come to me and go, what is the best quad exercise, what's the best hamstring exercise. You should have a selection. See the way I've put 5 or 6 exercises for each, right? You should have like a toolbox of exercises for each muscle group, like 6 to 8 or 6 to 10. All good exercises which you know hit the spot for you, and they're great and they work extremely well. You don't use your favourite exercises all at once. I'm not going to use all of these in one block, because then when things get stale after months and months of doing the exact same movements and I may need a little variation, if I'm using all the same movements, I've got nowhere to go. So what I always suggest to people, if you use 3 or 4 movements in a block and you progress those hard, you really drive your poundages up on those across a couple of training blocks. When some things get a little bit stale, you're struggling to make progress, you could be getting a little bit beat up, a couple of niggles in the joints from repetitively doing the same movement pattern. That's when you use some smart variation. Switch a good exercise out that you've made progress on, and then substitute in a new one which is fresh, and then build on that for a couple of months. So for example, let's say we have 4 quad movements for a block, right? So let's say we're gonna do this, and then hack squats, leg extension, and Bulgarian split squats, right? I'm not going to use pendulum squats for the next 3 months, but then after a couple of months, hack squats get stale, so we get rid of them and we replace hack squats with pendulum squats. As I say, I also didn't have room for leg press on here, so you know, something else, so Smith machine Bulgarian split squats could get stale, and I could switch them out for a single leg press. And you see, you have a toolbox of exercises which are very good for you, and you make the tweaks when you need to. Okay, do the same for hamstrings. If I might progress my stiff leg, good mornings, 45-degree back extension, and seated. Okay, there's my 4 exercises. Seated leg curls could get boring after like 3 or 4 months, and I'm not progressing on them. Switch those out for lying hamstring curl. Stiff legs could be getting extremely stale. Okay, after 3 or 4 months, switch those out and bring the RDLs in. Can you see how just having a pocket and a selection of good exercises, that's the way to go? And then you've always got room to bring new exercises in when you need a little bit of variation. But as I say, pick 3 or 4 for each block, really progress those hard, make sure you're driving your numbers up, make sure you're eating enough food, recovering, all that stuff. We know all that stuff. This stuff is just about the actual the exercise selection and reps and how we're going to do things. But if you follow that plan, something along these lines, for the next 1 to 2 years, your legs are going to grow like weeds. There is just no doubt about that. But it's just about really doing this properly and making sure that you're training with intent, smart exercise selection, and you're going to get the most out of it. Okay, so just let me know what you think. Any more questions, just let me know in the comment section, and I'll get to another video as soon as possible. Alright, talk to you soon.